I am back. Thank God I'm back because I have one of my Table Talk co hosts and a friend and a person of infinite knowledge, Mr. Daron Calhoun of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And what is your position there?
I'm a supervisor investigator and a program analyst.
And that we've had Daron on before. He's a friend of this show because we've had him on before to talk about your rights in the workplace. But what we'd like to talk about this morning is the fact that last month in June we celebrated the 50th anniversary.
Actually, it's July 2nd.
Oh, it's July 2nd. Mm-hmm. My bad. But June comes in. Anyway, of the signing of the Civil Rights Act. And I remember landing by Greyhound in King Street, South Carolina, the day after it was signed.
Wow.
And that changed King Street, South Carolina forever.
Yeah, and it actually changed the world. I mean, that was the landmark piece of legislation that that made it unlawful to treat people differently in the workplace and the other parts of the act, but in the workplace especially, on the basis of race, color, and religion, your national origin, and your gender. And
but people still try to do that
to the tune of nearly 3,000 charges a year in Michigan.
In Michigan alone?
In Michigan alone, 96,000 across the country last year. The year before that, it was 99,000. So we still have a need for civil rights, but this year we're stopping to take a moment just to look back on what was going on in 1964 that created this last 50 years. I mean, it was, I wasn't born in 1964, but I was born for 1964.
You got more gray
hair
than me.
And I missed it.
No,
exactly, and I missed it. I wish I was
Thank
here.
God for plural.
Because we're in our office. We've started a campaign. It's called 50 for 50, and we're going to do 50 events across the state and the northern part of Ohio for the next 50 weeks to celebrate 50
So how
years.
did we find out about this, and what kind of events are they?
Well, the beginning, what we're doing in the beginning was we're going to start with internal. We're teaching some of the younger people in our office and reminding some of the older people in our office why we're here. And we started with a series of documentaries because we have to train constantly. And part of our training is we're going to teach them this is what was going on in 1964. This is what was happening in the country. This is what was happening in the world. This is why the Civil Rights Act was brought. The next phase will be going out to the schools because schools start up in August, and between August and the end of the year, we're going to go start out free outreach to the schools to talk about the Civil Rights Act, how they can access it, and how they can and we're opening this up to any school that wants to come to talk to us.
How are you going to let them know?
Well, we've already started a campaign of writing to the schools, to the superintendents. We have some relationships with some of the schools already, where we do pretty consistent outreach, but the outreach will now be about the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Well, I think that, the superintendent is one thing, but I would suggest that the curriculum person or head of the history department and stuff like that you go to, because sometimes that stuff gets on a desk and it doesn't move.
Right, and we're really aware of that, and we have a lot of relationships with schools in Oakland County and in Wayne County. What we're trying to get to are some of the schools in Lansing. We have now a relationship with the schools in Flint, and we're going out to Flint. So the farther we can reach,
the better.
The better. Mm-hmm.
And it'll be nice. What am I telling you? You should know to keep the data.
Oh, absolutely.
And it would be interesting to do a pre-test. This is okay. This is the teacher. A pre-test and a post-test. What they knew before you walked in. Well, it's simple to do.
Let me see. If I'm a student and this old guy coming in.
No, you send
right.
it to the schools first. I know.
Now we have a program. I gotta go in my pocket again. No, we have a program called Youth at Work already, but that's dealing with sex harassment, and that's trying to teach young people because that's the incoming workforce don't really know about their rights under sex harassment, both in school and at work. So we have a program called Youth at Work where we send out a video and some testing, and then we go in and try to teach them what's going on. So, we have that. I've never thought about doing it with
Well,
with
I'm just saying, data. They should be data driven. I learned this because I took a lot of programs around to the schools with my students, and we'd send a pre-test before we did it on teen dating violence prevention.
Oh, wow.
And we had one on girls and violence that was funded by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And we wanted to know what they knew before we walked in, what they knew after we left. That's really important.
That's a great idea. So, so our focus this year, between July 2nd and July 2nd, is the Civil Rights Act of 1964 being signed, and then the EEOC opened its doors July 2nd, 1965.
Oh, okay, a year later.
A year later. And
whose initiative was that?
Well, that was the law created the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission that said a commission will study civil rights, and it will study the implementation of the law. But that wasn't enough, because just having the law and having no teeth,
right, enforcement,
and then enforcement came. That's why the law is great. The law is absolutely great, but it had to be amended, and that's why when you cite the law, it says Civil Rights Act of 1964 as amended, because over the years it was amended to become an enforcement agency. Then it amended again to become a litigation agency, and then amended again so that the EEOC investigators were sworn badged officers. Because when I started, we weren't. We were enforcement investigators, where we're just collecting information. Now we have the authority to go in, demand subpoena, have a subpoena, demand all.
Oh, okay, that's really, really, really interesting. And it's such a need still for that. And
Absolutely.
It shouldn't. What is it? Is it a resistance?
It's fear.
Yeah.
Discrimination, discrimination is the manifestation of that fear. What happens is, if I'm a person who is in the majority, and no matter what the majority is, if I'm in the majority, if I'm a male-dominated society or male-dominated
and I feel
workplace, I feel threatened because a woman is coming in, or an African American is coming in, or a white person is coming in to have this job. Now because of that fear, I've had to turn my fear outward, which creates hate.
Well, I wish I had been aware of that when I first got to Southfield in '88 to teach in Southfield. And I came in and kind of shook up things, because I believe not only in doing your work there, but creating outreach opportunities for the young folks. And I actually had one of my white coworkers break my props, the ones that I would take on the road. Me and the kids would go into Detroit, go into Inkster, and do different shows. And so what I had to do, I had to be my own EEOC.
Wow.
And had to handle them. I took them in the copy machine room, and I said, listen, you put on your pants and I put on my panties, one leg at a time.
We don't do that.
I turned into a black woman.
We don't do that anymore.
Okay.
But
I didn't know. I was really, they were trying to make it hard so I couldn't do my job.
And that was 24 years after the
Right.
law had been signed.
Right.
Imagine how it is now, 50 years after the law has been signed, and we go into a place, and I've gone into some places in Detroit and in Highland Park. I've gone into places where people have told me, I've never heard of you before. And these aren't young people. I said, we've been around since '64. I've never heard of you before.
But as I told you before, perhaps it would be nice to do a little more as far as promotion. And letting people know. That's why I try to give you every opportunity I can
Right.
to get on and let people know what their rights are.
Absolutely. And this is one way. This has resulted in a lot of telephone calls to our agency. So this is great. We can do as much promotion as the federal government can. With the declining resources, we have to find different ways. So we're reaching out on social media, and even if we have to go back to the old days of door to door, And like I used to tell people when I first started here in Detroit, if there are two people in the bus stop and you want me to come talk to them, I will talk to them about civil rights until the bus shows up.
That's great. But, also their community meetings, more so in Detroit, they're having more community meetings and things of that nature that people just need to be informed.
And that really is the case because the job market is coming back. But when it was declining and while it was on a steady decline, the people were being let go, and we had a spike in charges at that point because am I going to let go if I'm a captain of industry or somewhere or a supervisor, am I going to let go of somebody who looks like me, who goes to the same bar as me, or am I going to let go of somebody who probably I don't identify as much with? And that was happening. So
and
now
I'm not as comfortable.
Now the job market is coming back, and we're starting to do a lot more hiring. Who am I going to hire first? I know Joe, who I know his wife and his kids, and our kids go to the same school. Maybe I'll get Joe back a job so he can, because he's more qualified versus the PhD candidate. So.
Well, do the human resource people understand your job?
For the most part, yes, absolutely. I think so. They have the Society of Human Resources Managers, SHRM groups. They're always asking for training from us. Now, the human resources function, though, is a little different from our function. We're third-party neutral fact finders. Our checks are not signed by Company X, whereas the human resources person, their checks come from Company X. So when they do an investigation, and they do a great job, they do an investigation and try to fix it. The problem is the persons who created the bad acts won't allow the fix to happen. And that's where human resources get caught in the middle. They're trying to make it better. And we have a great relationship with a lot of them. They're trying to make it better. They just can't. So yeah, in a lot, for the most part, they are. They don't try to bury things. They try to fix them first, and that's the key is trying to.
I'm going to ask you something. Do you ever get frivolous complaints?
Absolutely. I mean, people just because a person complains doesn't mean that it's meritorious, and our investigators we see that in the first interview for a charge is called intake. We see that at the intake stage. I'm mad because I got fired. Well, why did they tell you were fired? Oh, they said I was late. Well, were you late this week? Yeah, okay, here we go. So and I was mad because for whatever reason. So we do get frivolous charges.
You made me really think of something. I have a student who was late all the time. I had one. And I told her, I said, you can't be late. It's so important because you're in high school now. You're going to be going to college and then into the workplace. And one day she came up to me and said, Miss Perryman, my daddy got fired from the post office because he was late. I've learned my lesson.
Yeah, that'll do. And a lot of times we'll get charges in our office where it sounds good in the beginning. And then there comes what Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. And the thing about the charges of discrimination that are coming to the EEOC, we're not advocates. We don't speak for anyone. We don't speak for the company. We don't speak for the charging party. Right. The charging party
do the investigation.
And that's all it is. We evaluate the evidence. And we analyze the evidence to determine if discrimination happened. If it did, we'll try to fix it.
Okay, question real quick.
Sure.
In 1964, when the Civil Rights Act passed, it did just deal with race, and then eventually it went into more things?
No. They all started with race,
gender,
and gender was added to try to kill the bill.
Really?
Because one of the senators out of Tennessee, is either Tennessee and Virginia, thought no real man would vote for a bill that says you can't discriminate against a woman. So what they did was and so they put it in and it boosted the bill so much that it passed easily. So so it was race, religion, gender, and national origin.
Wow. Race. That is amazing.
It is, and the history of it is real amazing because the president that signed the bill was from Texas,
Yeah.
and he lost a considerable amount of political support.
I know, but
because of that.
I don't know. Lyndon Johnson right now is very, very popular. First of all, there's a play on Broadway starring Bryan Cranston about him, but also his bravery. You know, he had a lot of bad. They have a series called The 60s.
Yes, I've been watching it.
Oh,
Love that
I
series.
love that series. And last night it didn't come on because of the airplane.
My DVR was recording, and I turned to it, and it was an airplane.
Anderson Cooper.
I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
it was
man.
Anderson Cooper. So I said, I got to catch this episode. But they did a good thing on him and how in that Vietnam War, they just couldn't get out of it. That was a quagmire. But the bravery, when he came in, he said he wanted to continue what Kennedy started.
Right.
And he went on and did that. And as I told you on Table Talk, that I actually got an opportunity to meet him. The only president I've seen other presidents in person, but Lyndon Johnson, I got a chance to meet him.
You know, one of the questions that when I look at that, and I had my son sit down, my youngest son sit down and look at it with me, that and a documentary on 1964. And one of the things we talked about is, could the Civil Rights Act get passed today?
And
With a Congress like this, as much as we know,
right,
could it get passed today?
right. But then, you know, people, I would say, well, people should just vote them out. But people have a tradition of voting against their own
And
interests.
that's what we were talking about.
And
yesterday.
everything.
Absolutely.
So, Daron, thank you so much. How could they reach the EEOC?
You can give us a call at 313-226-4600. That's the number on our desk, at our front desk. You can get us on the internet. You can www.eeoc.gov.gov. There is a Facebook page for the EEOC. We also have a Twitter page, so they can catch us anyway, or just call the Table Talk. And
Yes,
give
just
you a call, and
let
Brenda
me
knows how to
know.
get in touch with me.
I can do it. I'm your advocate
We'll have an EEOC selfie.
because I notice things are happening these days that's not right.